Hey guys, it is TitsMcGee here, and today I'm making another monk guide because my last one was not very beginner friendly, I would say, as I made assumptions and did not cover the correct aspects. For example, in the last video, Magic Find, I did not give an accurate representation of what Magic Find actually means, and I think that it could stray some people, and I felt kind of bad because I didn't really do enough research. And so this video, I really want to delve into it and have a guide that's for beginners, whether or not you're a new 70 or you're a new monk player, or if you're just new to the game and you want to learn how to really play as a class. I'm going to kind of go through that from the beginning. So I'm going to go over a couple topics here that I think are very important for getting a basic understanding of how to play Diablo. So a lot of these are going to be not class specific. I think the last 3 or 4 are going to be more of what a monk is. The first couple are more about the different kind of builds you can have, like DPS, tank, hybrid, that kind of stuff. I'll have a little thing in the side here if you already know all the stuff, you kind of want to go to the monk specific stuff, you can go down there. But let's go through the list right here quick here. So the second thing I want to talk about is Dexterity and what it does and why it is such an important stat to have. Then I'm going to show you guys the main stats you're going to want to find as a monk. Also stacking any kind of elemental percent damage and where you can get it, why and how. Build synergy I think is very important. You only have the ability to choose 6 different abilities when there are so many different ones. So choosing the right ones that complement each other is very important for having a successful build. Also switching up a rune or two. If I have something down here that you don't exactly like, for example, you think that you could choose a different rune, go for it. All builds aren't set in stone, so being able to switch it up to fit you personally is the great thing about having different kinds of runes. This one I haven't done a ton of research on, but I think is important. It's the importance of resistance and armor over life. I've seen as a monk that those 2 stats are more important than pure life. I'm not sure how that is for other classes, but I've seen for myself anyway that is true. Also, the importance of gems, especially on your chest and torso, is very important. And then a bit about gear, because the gear is important. And I'll talk about a bit of gear for the follower, because the follower does get overlooked on how to gear. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is how to improve and how to stay alive and just be an efficient player in general. But to kick things off, I'm just going to talk about the 3 ways that you can gear a monk. I brought it down because I always get good ideas when it comes to filming. I usually forget. So there are 3 ways you can gear and build a monk. It's a DPS, tank, and hybrid. This build relies on a fair amount of damage, but it's not mandatory. So say you have a lot of toughness. The build I'm currently using, I dual wield, but say you have a shield just to keep yourself alive, this build will still work, except it's going to take a lot longer to kill the enemies. But then again, it will still work. You can just kind of work up to get more DPS. There's a certain point where you're going to have to sacrifice some DPS for toughness, and that's okay at a certain point. Having to lose toughness to gain damage, say you have 20 million toughness, you can lose a bit of toughness and still be doing okay. If you're down to like 2 or 3 mil toughness, if you're trying to go into Tournament 1, that might be a bit of an issue. But at the beginning, if you're in hard or expert, having sub 2-3 mil toughness is perfectly fine. I find it's not as fun if you have a ton of toughness. This is just me anyway, that if you're just kind of sitting there and you're in a rift and it takes you 10 minutes to kill the Rift Guardian, I don't find that personally as fun. I love to see big numbers. I love to almost die. It might sound weird, but I love to be always trying to stay alive rather than waiting to kill an enemy. I don't find that as fun. So I think this is a fun build for me anyway. I really do enjoy this monk build. But then as a monk, your main stat's going to be Dexterity. And I'm going to talk about why Dexterity and how it works. So if you put your mouse cursor over Dexterity, it's every point in Dexterity increases all damage done by X%. So you might be thinking that say you have 8,000 Dexterity, you're doing 8,000% more damage. If you add 100% more, you'll be doing twice as much. But the way that Dexterity works is that it drops down to the base damage on your weapon. So say I do 1000 damage on the weapon, your dexterity then multiplies that damage, and that's how much damage you would do after the dexterity. The cool thing about Diablo is that everything is based on percentages. So your crit damage and your dexterity and your elemental damage is all based on a percentage, and it does not matter which way you add it up. You could do crit damage, then elemental, and then dexterity, or reverse it. And since it's commutative, it's going to be the exact same number, which is really cool when it comes to calculating things. You don't have to worry about, oh, what does Blizzard apply first, because since it's just multiplication, it all comes out to be the same number in the end. So that's why you're going to want to stack as much dexterity as possible, because it gives you a lot more damage. Just 100 dexterity, you're going to do twice as much damage on your base weapon, so getting a lot of dexterity is what's going to give you a lot more DPS. Another thing about DPS is that, dexterity, the dexterity increases your dodge chance. So getting dexterity will inadvertently help your toughness, and you can really survive and do more damage at the exact same time. Now for a monk, there are 4 or 5 stats you want to look out for, such as dexterity, crit chance, crit damage, and attack speed. Now attack speed can only be gained on your gloves, your rings, your amulet, and weapons, I believe. So there's something called the trifecta if you're new to Diablo, and a trifecta usually has attack speed, crit chance, crit damage, and then your main stat. If you see an item that has 2 of those things, hold on to it, because you can reforge it to try to get the 3rd stat. So always try and look out for things that have those 4 main stats if you're looking out for damage. If you're looking for toughness, I highly recommend looking out for all resistances, armor, or if you're using one with everything, that takes your highest resistance and it's equal to everything. So say I have 1000 lightning resistance, all my resistances now become 1000. You're going to want to look for things that have resistances such as physical resistance, whatever that is, because you can always reforge those secondary stats. So for example, on a couple here, I've reforged my secondary to lightning resistance, and one with everything is a great passive if you're looking for toughness. For example, I think my one with everything gives me approximately 4 million toughness. That's a 1 passive, and it gives me 4 million extra damage, which is amazing if you ask me. Like that kind of stuff, that 1 passive that just gives you a ton of toughness, I think is very, very valuable. On certain items, there will be a trifecta, as I was talking about, and you're going to want to look for that. If you can't find it though at the beginning, it's totally okay. As for example, I don't have a trifecta on some of my stuff. Just if you don't have it, just have a big video. Also, having a stat as primary as pure damage, also very good. This pure damage will go onto your weapon. So instead of doing 1500 damage, I'll be doing 1200 damage. Now 50 damage might not seem like a lot, but after you're adding your dexterity and your crit damage and everything, it will add up to be a ton of damage. So just having that little bit of 53 damage in the end can be very, very worth it. I think at higher end play, having that kind of damage is not that worth it, but if you're just beginning out, having that damage can be very worthwhile. Now when it comes to talking about gems in your chest and your legs are extremely important. Having a gem in your ring or your amulet is not that important, because having a primary affix such as dexterity will always outroll what a gem could be. When it comes to gems, I believe the maximum stat on a gem right now is 280, but on a ring you can have up to 415. So if you have a socket on a ring, you're going to want to reforge that into your main stat, and on an amulet it's even higher. An amulet can roll up to 750. So if you have a socket on your ring or amulet, I suggest reforging that and getting another stat. But when it comes to your chest and legs, your chest you can have 3 gems, and your legs you can have 2 gems. So on your chest you could technically have 280 times 3, so approximately 840 extra of 1 stat, just because you use gems. So unfortunately, I messed up, I done goofed, and I reforged into lightning resistance. I should have reforged life percent and gotten 840 extra dexterity, because that would increase your damage by quite a bit, or put in pure resistances. For your legs, it's almost the same. It's 2 sockets, you can have up to 560 of an extra stat, which, well, again, using dexterity or resistances, can help you out quite a bit. Now when it comes to stacking elemental damage, there are, I believe, 3 places you can do that. There are certain legendaries that will do that automatically, such as this waste I have here. Not all wastes will have an elemental percent increase. This one has it because it's just one of the things that is unique to the legendary. But things that will always have it, you can always get an elemental increase on your wrists, on an amulet, and I believe on hands. I'm not sure about that. I know that there is a legendary called a Mage Fist, which you can roll fire damage, and I think that is unique to that legendary, so do not quote me on that. I think you can get some, but I'm not 100% sure. And then other than that, you can get lightning skill, elemental percentage off of set bonuses like I have here. The reason why this is very important, because, for example, all my damaging spells are lightning. So say I have 8,000 dexterity, and I have 500% crit damage, and then I have, let's see here, I think I have 49% lightning damage increase. Those all are going to accumulate, and you're just going to do more and more and more damage. So the cool thing is that you don't have to just be adding up numbers like 2 plus 2, for example. It's always going to be 2 times n, where n is the percentage of something. So having this kind of stuff in Diablo is very important. It's always going to be about multiplying. You rarely will ever see you add damage. It's always going to be by percentages, which brings me to my next topic of why armor and resistances are better than life. I think this is true because when you get life, you're just adding a number. Vitality gives you 50,000 health, for example. So when you're taking damage, just because you have more health, you're going to take the exact same amount of damage, and unless you can refill your health bar very quickly, having more health is almost meaningless. Other than health globes, you're going to need a lot of life on hit or life after kill or something of that sort to be able to replenish all your health. So say, for example, you have 1 million health or 10 million health. If you can't replenish your health quickly, having that much health is completely worthless. Whereas, say, for example, I have 1000% lightning resistance, I'm going to reduce damage from level 70s by 75%. If I'm on Torment 1, it's going to be 75%, and if I'm on Torment 6, it's going to be 75%. But if you have 1 million health, and you go to Torment 1, the amount that they hit compared to Torment 6 is going to be a huge increase, because you're not doing percentages, you're just adding straight up numbers. So instead of dividing, you're essentially subtracting, and dividing will almost always, get you a smaller number than subtracting. So I'm not sure how much math goes in behind that. It's just something that I've seen over the past couple weeks as playing as a monk, that I can have extremely low health, but have extremely high resistances and extremely high armor and still live, because even though I have low health, I'm taking less damage. So out of all those things, those are the main things for gearing up and attributes as a monk. Now to get into the build, I'm going to go through and I'm going to explain why I use each ability. I think that if you can explain to another person why you do it, then you understand it. If you have trouble explaining it, then you don't really understand it yourself. So the reason that I use Deadly Reach with Scattering Blows is mainly because it's lightning damage, and I get 50% more damage. But the good thing about this though is that it hits enemies behind you. Fist of Thunder and Wave of the 100 Fist both will always hit enemies in front of you. Crippling Wave is AoE. It is enemies in front of you. This one, on the third attack, I'll show you here. It attacks people within 25 yards randomly and has a chance to knock them up. So say you're facing one way and there's an enemy behind you, you have a chance to hit him and not just enemies in front of you, which I think is very beneficial. As for Lashing Tail Kick, I use this quite a bit because of lightning damage and because of the very high weapon percent damage. 624% is huge, and also it has an 85% chance to be stunned. So when I have that, it goes great with my Haunt of the Vexo, which allows me to summon 2 people. Also, stun locking a boss or a champion can be very beneficial to staying alive, because if you're not taking damage, you're not going to die. As for Sweeping Winds with a high crit chance is extremely good for AoE damage. It's always dealing damage around you, and when the lightning tornadoes spread out, it can even do more damage. So this is just a straight up damaging ability. I've been trying out Dashing Strike, and I found it's the best thing to use for staying alive. You can use it constantly for getting out of Molten, getting out of things like Waller and Arcane Enchanter. This is just very good for staying alive and keeping mobile, other than getting trapped in a corner, because when you get trapped in a corner, you usually die. So I tried using other things like 7-sided strike for the damage, and even though my damage was higher, I was dying more often, and that's not a good trade-off for me. When you're dead, you do 0 damage, so when you're alive, you can do some damage, so I'd rather stay alive than do a bit more damage. As for Epiphany, there is no damaging ability that has lightning. There is a lightning rune, but all it does is give you, if you teleport more than 10 yards, you will stun the enemy, and that does no damage, so I don't really have an interest in using lightning because it does no damage and I won't get any benefit from it. As for Inner Fire, it just does damage, and the reason why I use Inner Fire is because, as I said before, it will do more damage, and Epiphany, it will increase your spirit generation by 20 per second, and you can teleport around, so it's very good for staying alive. And when you activate this, you can spam Lashing Tail Kick almost constantly. You can just do it over and over and over again, and that's what I call the bursting phase. And since you can cast that over and over and over again, it really helps out with Transcendence. With Transcendence, you're going to be getting 240 life for every spirit spent. So if you're spamming this and you do costing 30 spirit, 30 times 25, approximately 9,000. So you'll be gaining 9,000 life every single time you use Lashing Tail Kick. So even though you're dealing a tremendous amount of damage, you're also gaining life. I've also been noting a weird, I'm not sure if it's a glitch or not, but while Epiphany is active, you do not get frozen. I'm not sure if anybody else has noticed this, but I've done some tests. It doesn't say that you're immune to crowd control anyone here, but if you activate Epiphany and you stand in a frozen, you will take damage, but you will not get stunned. You will not get rooted in place. It might be a glitch, I'm not really sure, but all I know is that with Epiphany you can outstand frozen. As for Mantra of Conviction, it again is just straight up damage. The good thing about enemies within 30 yards is that it will affect people within range of your Sweeping Wind. So even if you're hitting them with your Deadly Reach, you will still be doing more damage to them with the cyclones going off everywhere. As for the passives, a lot of my passives are just based on survival. Seize the Initiative gives you a ton more armor, and armor reduces all damage from enemies your level. Exalted Soul helps with the bursting phase. After this, I'll talk about the 3 different kinds of rotations you're going to use. One's for a mob, one's for a rare pack, and one's for a boss or champion. I've talked about One with Everything a little bit, but it's extremely good. You can get really, really high resistance really easily, and it gives you a ton of toughness. And Transcendence just keeps you alive by constantly healing you at the same time of dealing damage. So this is my overall build. I have tried using some things like Fist of Thunder instead of Deadly Reach. I just found that personally I really like using Deadly Reach. It seems to be the best suited for my playstyle. So if you guys want to switch up anything, leave a comment if you guys think that there's anything that I'm missing. Any criticism is always welcome. And for the next little bit, I'm going to talk about the rotations I use. So, say you're against a mob and it's just some normal enemies, I suggest just using Sweeping Wind and Scattering Blows and Lash and Tail Kick on and off. If you're playing at the right difficulty, it shouldn't take too long to kill the normal mobs. You can just kind of go through them until you meet an elite or rare pack. Now when it comes to an elite or rare pack, I highly suggest using Epiphany, getting up to about halfway of your maximum spirit, using Mantra of Conviction, and then just spam Lash and Tail Kick. What this will do is that at halfway, you can use Lash and Tail Kick for approximately 5 seconds, and by that time, you will either kill the elite or get down very, very, very low. So you don't want to wait too long because they do damage to you and you don't want to die. So I'd say run in there, use Epiphany, get about halfway up there, Mantra of Conviction, and then just spam Lash and Tail Kick. After this, I'll go and I'll show you guys what I mean by that. And then when you're facing a boss, it's a bit different. What I do is that I get up to full mana. I get up to full spirit. I use Epiphany, and then I use Mantra of Conviction, and then I just use Lash and Tail Kick all the way down. I do this because since it has so much more health, you want to have the longest possible time using Lash and Tail Kick while Mantra of Conviction is active. You want to have that extra 8% damage, because as I said before, all of the percentages are going to add together and you can do a ton of damage. So just kind of use Mantra of Conviction and then just spam Lash and Tail Kick until Mantra of Conviction ends, and then use it again. And then once you get to very low spirit, use your spirit generator and get all the way back up there. As for that, I think that's the whole build. As for gear, there are certain pieces of gear that if you have, I'd recommend. The Raiment of 1,000 Storms 4 set and 6 set were buffed. After using Dazzling Strike, you release lightning that deals 3,000% weapon damage, and that lightning can crit, and it also scales with your increased lightning damage. So right there, that will do a ton of damage. If you can get the 6 set, I suggest getting 5 and then running Act 1 bounties to get a Ring of Royal Grandeur, which reduces the requirement of sets by 1. As for weapons, having a Sunkeeper, which increases damage against leads by 15 to 30%, is also very good. Adding more percentage is what you really want. You just want to stack up as much as you can, because that's how you're going to be doing a lot of damage. As I said in the previous video, having a Thunder Fury or having a Fulminator are always very, very good options. If you see one, I'm not saying to use it if you lose DPS. If you lose DPS, I suggest not using it. Some Thunder Furies and Fulminators do have very bad rolls. On the weapons, I highly suggest using greens to increase your crit damage. The good thing about having dual wielding is that you're going to increase your damage by 250% if you both gem them correctly. And on to the last topic, but definitely not the least important topic. I'm going to talk about gearing up for your follower and how to survive and how to improve as a player. So personally, right now, I am using Magic Find items on my Templar. I read the patches before 2.0.1 and realized that after that there's going to be no more Magic Find. So I just kept some items. I think the Nagel Ring is the one exception. You can find a Nagel Ring in Reaper's Souls and it will have Magic Find, up to 50% I believe. But so when a follower has Magic or Gold Find, 1/5 of that is translated to you. Now I know, as I said in the video beforehand, that Magic Find is not that good. It says right here in the description that this increase is diminished for rare and legendary and set items. Now to be more exact, the Magic Find that you have, 100% of it works for blue items, 30% of that works for rares, and 10% of that works for legendaries. So right now, I have an 8% increased chance of finding legendaries. It doesn't mean that I have an 8% chance to find them. It means that I have an 8% increased chance from the already set chance of finding it. Unfortunately, Blizzard is pretty stingy when it comes to that information, so no one knows what the exact chance is, but I have an 8% higher chance than someone who has 0 Magic Find. A lot of people don't think it's worth it to get Magic Find. Personally, I do, because when you think about the raw number of monsters that you're killing, having an 8% could help somewhere. I also find that I gave my Templar some good gear, and he stayed alive for a bit longer, but they don't do too much. If you're looking for a Templar or a follower that's going to give you a damage increase, I recommend the Scoundrel. You can get crit chance and attack speed off of him. The Enchantress, I believe, has a couple of good things, mostly spells and card control. But other than that, that's how I gear my Templar. I think I actually have an extra ring. I actually have an extra ring that has a 19% better chance of finding magical items. So if anybody's watching and they still get to this point, if you comment Swordfish, the first person to comment Swordfish, I will give you this ring. Just saying, if anyone's going to watch this far into the video, they gotta be rewarded. So if you see this, if you comment Swordfish, I will go to you in game and I will give you this 19% magic find item just for you. So now, when it comes to staying alive and how to improve, one of the biggest things that I think is important is dodging attacks. Now, you might think that I'm talking about having a dodge chance, but I'm talking about physically moving away and dodging an attack. As you do, you have an attack animation. So say the person's not in front of me right there. If the person's not right here, I'm not going to hit them. They could run around. The cool thing is that, especially for Mallet Lords and certain bosses and or minions, you can see when they're going to attack, and you can physically move out of the way. I'll show you guys an example right here. And as I would say, the best way to avoid damage is to not take any damage. So say you go and you try to find a Mallet Lord somewhere, if I can find one. If you're gonna get attacked, if you move out of the way, they won't be able to hit you. That was a bad example. But say you're gonna get attacked. If they can't even attack you, if they can't hit you, they'll take no damage. You see that? You see how he went to hit me, but he missed? That is the best way to take no damage. That is the best way to stay alive. It might see, and I'm not talking about doing it all the time, because you do need to stand still to do some damage. But for the Mallet Lord, you see how he's going to get ready to attack? If you move out of the way, he can't attack you. He can't hit you. Well, he hit me there. But if you move out of the way at the right moment, you will not take damage. And I think that is one of the best ways to stay alive, and that's one of the differences between going to Torment 2 or Torment 1 and improving. Because if you can move out of the way and not take 150,000 damage, you're going to stay alive longer. Another good way of improving is just playing. I know this sounds stupid, but just playing and watching people play on YouTube, for example. There are two different playing styles, playing in a group and playing solo. So if you're not having fun playing solo, I highly suggest going and trying out playing in a group. You might like it better. It does definitely require a different kind of play set and a different kind of mind, because you have to go together. You have to attack one thing together. But other than that, that's how you do it. That's how you stay alive, and that's how you improve. So other than that, I hope that the guide was more informative than the last one. If you anyone new that has any questions I didn't answer in the guide, please comment below. I'm fairly active on YouTube. I can comment as fast as I can. I can reply, help you guys out. If you have any suggestions for further videos, please leave them in the comments. I'll try my best to get to them. And as always, take care, guys.